industry was taking itself very seriously, Frank Zappa and his band, the Mothers of Invention, seemed to mock everything in sight, including their own music. While other groups were preaching love and peace, Zappa and the Mothers would insult their audiences and readily admitted that one of their songs had no message and was designed to suck in the 12-year-olds. Well, 13 years and a dozen albums later, Zappa is still drawing the crowds in and writing hit songs for a new generation of fans. His onstage antics and wild man image often blur the fact that he is an accomplished musician, composer, and producer. And through it all, Zappa has kept his sense of humor, remaining the clown prince of rock. This sense of humor has made him an interviewer's nightmare, so we thought we might like to have him interview himself.
Hi, I'm Frank Zappa, interviewing Frank Zappa. Only this one is dressed up to be like an interviewer, and the other one is pretending to sit over there. Now I'm going to ask him the first question. Frank, what was your reaction to the Toronto concert?
I thought it was an excellent show, played before an audience that seemed as if they were watching us on television. And then at the end of the show, they all jumped up and ran toward the front of the stage, trying to give an indication that they, yes, in fact, were alive, which was very nice.
There seems to be a great difference between your public image and your real life.
I'll wake up in the morning, get a cup of coffee, and go to work. Which consists of going downstairs, either to the basement or to the studio. And I'll stay in the studio until I have to go to the toilet. Then I'll go to the toilet, and I'll go back in, and I'll go back to work. And I'll stay in there until I get hungry. And then I'll get something to eat, and then I'll go back to work.
Fascinating.
And then I'll stay in there until I get sleepy, and then I go to bed. And then I get up the next day, and I get a cup of coffee, and I do it all over again. And when that's all done, I go on the road.
Extremely fascinating.
Student of music. He wrote an unfinished ballet score and typically called it lumpy gravy. He's also had some unflattering comments to make about punk rock and new wave, but maybe that's Zappa continuing to remain on the outside of the musical mainstream.
At the height of the hippie movement, you came out with Only in It for the Money. Are you doing the same with your comments on punk?
Well, I try to take a rational approach to what's going on. You know, trends are designed to amuse people, and when people start taking them too seriously and think that that's the way the real world actually is, I think that it's part of my duty to remind them that the trend was manufactured for commercial purposes by somebody who set out to provide something to sell. That's the way trends go. And at the time of the hippie movement, I was very suspicious of it because I always thought that it was invented by the CIA as a convenient means of providing a vehicle for testing LSD on civilians. And as far as the new wave movement goes, there's so much in it that seems to be a rerun of the 1960s. And since I've already lived through the 60s and experienced all the splendor that that had to offer, there's certain things about new wave that don't amuse me because they're such cheap imitations of things that have already happened. And there are other things about new wave that are really good because they do constitute certain musical advances, and some of the attitudes that are contained in the new wave songs I can identify with. But there's a certain section of new wave music that exists only to be stylish, and I don't care for it.
Just what I thought.
My favorite recollection of the 50s was that in a small town newspaper where I lived, there was a big article on page 1, Ike plays golf today, and on page 26, in a little tiny paragraph, scientists in Florida discover secret of life by putting an electrical charge into some amino acids and it reproduces, something like that. You know, that's the way things were balanced out in the 50s. The values are really tweezed around. No wonder the girls had those funny-looking hairstyles. I really enjoy my work, which is people hate their work. But I'm lucky because I love my work, and I can get paid for doing something that I enjoy. And so I put everything into it.
What would you really like to know about yourself?
What time is it?
What are your plans for the near and the distant future?
For the immediate future, I plan to continue doing what I'm doing.
Of course, Mr. Zappa.
I'm a boring guy, but you asked for the interview. I didn't call you.
Yes, that's true. Thank you, and good night.